Alright, so we're going to go ahead and set up our environment for our first project. Now, we're going to install Node.js, and we're also going to install a tool called Git Bash, which is a command line tool for Windows that will give you a couple other features that the standard command line doesn't have. But in no way is it required. You can use the standard Windows command line or your terminal in Linux or Mac or whatever you'd like to use. Alright, so to download Node.js, we're going to go to nodejs.org and click on the latest stable version. Okay, I already have it here, but you'll want to download it. And then we're going to open that up. Alright, so we're going to run it. And it's just like any other Windows installer. We're just going to kind of go through it, click Next, accept the agreements, and the default folder is the program files folder, which is fine. We're going to keep all the defaults. It's going to add to path, alright, so we'll be able to access node and npm from the command line from anywhere. Alright, so we'll install that. Alright, so that's finished, and that's all there is to it. We now have Node on our system. Alright, next thing is going to be the Git Bash tool, and you want to go to gitscm.com, and again, you don't need this. It's just a tool that I like to work with in Windows. Alright, I'm going to click this Downloads for Windows, and we're going to go ahead and download that file. Alright, so that's all set. Let's go ahead and run it. Again, this is just a simple Windows installer. Okay, we're going to put it in the program files folder, and this stuff can all stay default. This option here, I'm actually going to choose the last one. This is going to allow us to use some extra Unix tools from the Windows command prompt. Alright, so we'll select that, and then the rest of these we'll just keep default. Okay, so that's all set. I'm going to uncheck that, click Finish. And we should have this on our desktop. Well, it usually adds it. Alright, that's fine. So we'll just go ahead and search for it. Git Bash, and I'm going to pin to the start. Actually, no, we'll just bring it. It didn't pin. Alright, that's fine. We'll just go to the actual shortcut, and let's see, I'm going to bring it down here into my taskbar. Alright, so we can now access it from here, and another cool thing that this does is, let's see, if we want to, let's say I'm going to create a folder called projects in my C drive. Alright, and if we want to open the command line in this folder, all we have to do is right click, and we have a couple context menus here. Okay, so we want to say Git Bash here, and that's going to go ahead and open up the command line for us in that folder. Alright, and we can use commands like ls and other Unix based commands. Now, just to make sure that Node was installed, we can say node v. Okay, that's going to tell us our version number. Also npm, we want to check that, and that looks good. Alright, now npm we'll get into later on. It stands for Node Package Modules, and it's basically just a package manager so that we can add and remove plugins or modules to and from our application. Alright, so that's going to be it for now. In the next video we'll look into npm more, and we'll also look at a basic HTTP server using Node.js. Hey guys, welcome to your next project. In this project we're going to be building a user authentication system using Node.js, Express, and Passport. Okay, Passport is a very flexible authentication system for Node.js, and if you look at the documentation, there's a lot of good stuff here, a lot of good knowledge, and shows you how to pretty much do anything from logging in using a local database like we'll be doing, up to logging in with Facebook or Twitter or Google. So it's very flexible. So let me just give you a quick demo. This is the login page. Okay, first we'll register for an account. Let's just say, we'll say Harry, email harry@gmail.com. Username will be Harry, password, confirm password. Okay, you can also upload an avatar. So let's click register. Now it says we're registered and we can log in. So let's go ahead and do that. And there we go. So now we've got redirected to the members area. Now we're not going to do anything further than this because it's just the authentication system. All right, you can take this and you can use this in your applications if you want to add that functionality. Over here you also see we have a logout button. If I click that, it logs us out. All right, so that's what we'll be doing. Pretty simple, but also very flexible in terms of using it with another application. Hey guys, in this project we're going to be creating an authentication system where users can go and they can register, they can log in, and we can implement some kind of access control. Alright, so it's going to be kind of a big project compared to the first two. And the reason I'm doing it really early on is because there's a lot of stuff that we can use in future projects, alright, when it comes to authentication. So there's a few different modules we're going to use here and a few different technologies. We're going to be using MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database. So it's quite different from a relational database if you've never used NoSQL. Specifically, MongoDB is a document NoSQL database, so it holds what's called documents. And all documents really are JSON objects. All right, that's how they're formatted. They're really easy to use. It's very scalable, and these databases were created to hold just tons and tons of data. All right, so we're on Windows, so we're going to go ahead and install MongoDB. So if we go to mongodb.org/downloads, you'll see a page like this, and I'm on a Windows 64 machine, so I'm going to go ahead and download the file here. All right, we're going to save that. It's about 93 megabytes, so it might take a minute. And the main module that we're going to be using for user registrations and all that is called Passport, which is a really well-known module for authentication with Node.js. And we'll also be using something called BCrypt, which will allow us to encrypt our passwords. Alright, because you don't want to save plain text passwords in your database by any means. You don't want to do that ever. So it's important to have something to encrypt the passwords. Alright, so that's downloaded. I'm going to go ahead and open it. Alright, so we want to accept and click next. Now, by default, it's probably going to install it in the program files folder, but I don't want to do that. I want it right in my C drive. So I'm going to change this location here. Alright, so click Browse, and I'm going to go to C drive, and I'm going to create a new folder, and we'll call it MongoDB. Alright, so we want to install it right there. We'll click OK, and Next, and then Install. Okay, so it's finished installing. Now there's a few things we have to do before we can actually use it. So let's go. We want to go into C drive and then MongoDB. So it basically just gave us this bin folder. That's where all the programs are, including MongoExe and MongoDEXE, which is the daemon. What we want to do is create a couple folders here. We want one called Data. And inside that data folder, we want another folder called DB. Alright, and then alongside of data and bin, we want a log folder. Now what we want to do is open a Windows command prompt, and we want to open it as administrator. Actually, I'm going to go to search. Okay, so we want the CMD program. We want to run as administrator. Alright, so now what we're going to do is navigate to that MongoDB folder. Okay, we can see we have the bin, data, and log. Now we want to go into the bin folder, so cd bin. I'm going to make this a little bigger for you guys so you can clearly see it. Alright. Now what we want to do is we want to say MongoD, and we want to add a bunch of different flags here, because what we need to do is tell it where the data folder is and where the log file is going to be. Alright, so first flag is going to be directory per DB. Alright, and then we're going to say $DB path. Alright, and that's going to be in our C drive backslash MongoDB slash data slash DB. Okay, next thing is going to be the log path. Okay, and this is going to be in our C drive slash MongoDB. What was it? Slash log, and then the name of it we'll just call let's call it MongoDB.log. Then we want to specify log append. Alright, and the reason we're doing that is because we don't want the log files to get overwritten. We want to just append them to the end. And then two more things we need to add. Okay, so we want REST, which will allow us to use the REST interface, and then we also want install. And that's going to let us run it as a service. So let's go ahead and run that. So now we want to try to run the service. We'll say net start MongoDB. Alright, and it says the service was successfully started. Now there's also a shell program that comes with Mongo, and as long as we're in the bin folder, we should be able to run it with Mongo. Alright, and this opens up a nice shell interface that we can use, and we can do things like create databases, create documents, update, delete, pretty much anything we want. We can also manage our collections. Okay, if you've never used MongoDB or NoSQL database, collections can be, I guess they could be compared to tables in a relational database. So for instance, if we have a database for our blog, we might have a post collection, we might have a categories collection, and so on, users. Now we're not going to go in depth with the syntax in this video, but I will show you a few things. So if we just say DB, that's going to tell us what database we're currently in. So by default, we're in the test database. Alright, if we want to create a new one and go into it, we can say use. Alright, so let's just say use customers. Alright, and you can see that it created the database customers and switched us to it. So if we say DB, it shows us that we're in customers. We can also use show DBs, and that'll show us all the available databases. Now the reason you don't see customers or test is because there's nothing in it. Okay, if there's nothing in it, it's not going to show it here. So what we want to do is let's go ahead and create a collection. Alright, so we'll say db dot create collection, and we'll put the collection name in here. Let's call it customers. Alright, and it gives us this OK one. Alright, so now if we say show DBs, now you can see we have a customers database. We named the database and the collection customers, which we probably shouldn't have done, but it's fine. We can also use a command called show collections, and you can see we have one collection called customers. So in the next part of this section of this lecture, we're going to actually create the database for our project, and I'll also show you how to add data and also how to fetch it. Alright, so I will see you in part B. Hey guys, welcome back. In the last part of this video, we went ahead and installed MongoDB. I showed you how to log into the shell and create a database as well as create a collection. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create the database for our application, for our Node.auth application. And we're going to actually insert some data, and I'll also show you how to fetch that data from the shell. Okay, so let's create a new database, and to do that we can simply say use and then name it. Okay, I'm going to call this Node.auth. Alright, so you can see we switched to Node.auth, and we want to create a collection called users. So let's say db.create collection, and we're going to call this users. Okay, so we'll run that. And now if we say show collections, we have users. Now to insert a user, we can simply say db.users.insert. Alright, and then we need to insert a document, which is basically just a JSON object. So we need our curly braces, and first thing we'll give it is a name. Okay, I'm just going to use my name. Alright, next thing we want is the email. Alright, next thing is going to be the username. Okay, for username I'm just going to put Brad. And we also want a password. Now when we build our application, the password will be encrypted, but for now I'm just going to put a plain text password. Alright, you never want to do that in a production app. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and run that, and you can see we get this n_inserted1. Alright, now if we want to see the records in our database, we can say db.users.find. Alright, and that gives us our user. So let's add one more. Okay, I'm just going to change some stuff up here. Oops, can't use the mouse. Alright, so for username, we'll say John. We'll change the email up. And the name. Okay, so let's run that. Now if we do db users find, it gives us both users. There's also a helper function we could add onto this called .pretty, and that gives us a nicely formatted list. Now you'll notice that we have this underscore ID, and we didn't create that. Okay, MongoDB creates this object ID for us automatically, which is really nice because it's unique, so we can use it in our application as a primary key. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how we can do an update. Okay, so to do that, we'll say db.users.update. Alright, and then in here, we're going to put in the first parameter, which will go inside of these curly braces, and let's say user. And actually not user, what was it? Let's get the user by username. Okay, so where username equals John. Alright, and then the next parameter, we're going to put in curly braces, and then we're going to say $set, and then that'll have its own set of curly braces. Alright, and then in here we want to change, let's say, the email. So we'll say email, and let's change it, what is it, jdoe@gmail. Let's change it to jdoe@yahoo.com. Alright, and enter. Okay, so now if we go and we say find, now you can see that John Doe has a Yahoo email. Alright, and using that set, you want to use that $set, because if you don't, then it's just going to change the email, but it'll get rid of everything else, and you don't want that usually. Alright, so that's how we can update. Alright, now let's go ahead and let's add one more. Okay, I'm just going to change username. to we'll say Mike. Alright, and I'm just going to keep that because what I'm going to do is show you how to remove a record. Alright, so if we do find, you can see the name is still John Doe, but the username is Mike. Alright, so what we want to do is delete Mike. So to do that, we'll say db.users.remove. Alright, and then we're going to pass in here where username is equal to Mike. Alright, so if we do our find again, now you can see that Mike is gone. Alright, so that's how we can do create, read, update, and delete using MongoDB. So we're going to keep this database as is because we're going to be using it in our project. So I will see you in the next video. Hey guys, in this video we're going to start to create our application. Alright, so we're going to be using Express, and we're going to use something called the Express generator, which will allow us to just type in a command and have it generate a bunch of files and folders for us that we can use in our app. Alright, so let's go ahead and create a folder. Okay, you can create it wherever you want. Mine's going to be in my projects folder. And we're going to call this node auth. Alright, now inside there, I'm actually going to open my command line in that folder using git bash. Okay, and let me make this a little bigger. So you want to make sure you have Express installed globally so you can access it from anywhere, and also the Express generator. So we're going to run npm install g express. Okay, then we also want to run install g express generator. Okay, so now while we're in the node auth folder, let's just say Express. Okay, and it's going to create a bunch of stuff for us. Alright, so it gave us a bin folder, public, routes, views, our app.js, and our package.json. Alright, so what we're going to do is open up the package.json, and I'm actually going to add this project to my editor here. Okay, so in here you can see that it's actually added a bunch of dependencies for us. Body parser, cookie parser, debug, Express, of course, Jade, which is the template engine, Morgan, and Serve Favicon. Okay, so there are actually quite a few dependencies that we need to add here. Alright, first one is going to be MongoDB. And I'm going to just be using the latest version of all of these. Alright, we also want something called mongoose, which is an ORM. It's going to give us a way to easily interact with our database through our application. And there's a few different ones. Mongoose is one of the most popular, and it's really easy to use. Alright, we also need something called connect flash. And that has to do with the ability to add messages. So for instance, when we log in, we want something to say you're now logged in. Alright, so that'll help with that. And then we need something else to go with that, which is called express messages. And a lot of these you'll see throughout the course in other applications as well. Alright, next one we need is the Express validator, so we can have form validation. Alright, now we're going to be using something called passport. Alright, and that's going to be for our login, for our registration. So we want passport. Okay, and then we want something called passport local. Alright, and passport actually comes with a few different modules. For instance, there's a Facebook one, there's Twitter, and you can actually log in using those. But the last passport one we're going to want is passport HTTP. Alright, and then we also want something called multer. and that's a module that will allow us to upload images if we want. So let's go ahead and save this, and then we're going to go back into the command line and we're going to say npm install. Alright, and it might take a whoa, what's this? Oh, I misspelled passport. HTTP. Okay. And as I was saying, it might take a minute or two because there's quite a few dependencies for it to install. Okay, so now we have this node modules folder with a whole bunch of different things in it. All right, we're not gonna need to go through that. Very, very rarely will you need to edit node modules. So now what we're gonna do is close that up and open up app.js. Okay, so there's quite a bit of including that we need to do here. So let's go under the body parser require, and you can see that all of the modules that the generator included or installed, it required them automatically. All right, and we have some other stuff going down here that I'll explain in a minute. All right, so let's insert. Oh, you know what? One thing we forgot was express session. We didn't have that. All right, so we could just add it here and do npm install, but I also just want to show you that we can say npm install, and then whatever the module is, this is going to be express session. Now, as it is here, it'll install it, but it won't add it to the package.json file. If we want it to add to that, then we need to add save. All right, and now you can see, where is it? Right here, express session. All right, so let's go back to our app file and include it. Actually, this is going to be var session equals require express session. Alright, so after that, let's include passport. Alright, and then with passport, we have to create what's called a strategy, and I like to put it right under the passport inclusion. So we're going to say var local strategy equals require, and this is where we want to require passport local. Alright, but we also want to add on the end here dot strategy. Just like that. Okay, after that, let's do Multer. Okay, we also want our connect flash. Then we want MongoDB. Okay, and then mongoose. Now, under here, we want to create a database variable, and we're going to set that equal to mongoose.connection. Okay, just like that. And then moving along, you can see that we have two variables, routes and users, and we're setting those to the index file inside of the routes folder, and then the users file inside the routes folder. Now, in the last project, we put our routes directly in the app.js file. All right. If you remember, we had app.get, and then we had the route, and then a function with whatever we want to happen when we hit that route. In this case, we have them in their own separate files. All right. So you can see in our index, we have router.get/ and you know, we have the rest of the route here. Now when doing this, we need to have this line here, module.exports router. That's what's going to allow us to access it from a different file. Alright, in this case right here. Alright, if we don't have that, it's not going to work. Alright, now in the users.js, you'll see we also have router.get/. But since this is in the users file, the way we have it set up, what this means is really if we go to /user or users. Alright, now if right here we put, let's say, edit, then it's really going to be going to users/edit. Alright, hopefully that makes sense. So let me just save that. That's what's going on there. Right here we're just instantiating the app variable with express. We're telling the system we want to use Jade, and then this is just middleware stuff, nothing we really have to pay attention to right now. This here is saying that we want public to be the static folder, and then here, since we did this up here and we have our routes in separate files, we have to make sure we use app.use and then you know, the route and then the name of the variable that holds the file. Alright, and that's stuff we don't really need to care about. Now there is a bit of middleware we have to add. For instance, to use Multer for file uploads, we have to do that. So let's say handle file uploads, and what we need to do is say app.use. Okay, whoops, we don't want quotes there. We want to say app use Multer, and then that's going to be a function, and then in here we just want to pass in a destination. So we want to say dest, and let's say ./uploads. Oops. So now we want to do the middleware for sessions. I'm going to put that right here. Okay, so app.use, and we want to say session, and then inside here, let's say secret. This could be anything. I'm just going to make it secret. Alright, we also want one called save uninitialized. Okay, that's going to be true. And then we want resave, and that's also going to be true. And I just noticed I spelled uploads wrong. Alright, so down here after the session, let's do our passport middleware. Okay, passport again is the authentication system. So let's say app.use, and in here we want to say passport.initialize, which is a function, and then we want to say passport.session. Okay, so next thing is the validator. So in here we want to say express validator, which we should have up here. Or did we not include it? Oh, actually we're including it down here. I'm actually going to look that up real quick. Okay, so here's our usage. Middleware options, this is what we want. So I'm just going to grab this whole thing here, copy it, Paste it in there. Now we also need our middleware for the messages. So let's say connect flash. Actually, I want to look at the express messages. Alright, so let's grab this here, and we're going to put that right here. Alright, so there's quite a bit of middleware that needs to be configured, just because we're using so many different modules. So let's try to save this and go ahead and run the server. Okay, so we'll say npm start. Alright, so let's see, we have an error here. App.use requires middleware. Let's see, what's that about? I think that this has to do with this line right here. I'm actually going to change this. So we're including Malta right here. I'm actually going to put this right under that. Alright, so let's say var upload equals Malta, and then we can put in our destination. Alright, let's see if that works. Express validator is not defined. Oh, I didn't include it. Okay. So let's put the validator right under passport. Okay, so it looks like it's running. Let's go to localhost 3000 and we get Express. Okay, we open the console and it looks like we have no errors. Alright, good. So we have our middleware set up. In the next video, we're going to get into our views and layouts. Alright, so now we're going to start to get into the views and layouts part of our application. So I want to use Bootstrap. So at getbootstrap.com, I'm going to just go ahead and download it. Alright, and let's open that up. And let's also open up the application folder. Alright, so all this stuff is going to go in the public folder. So in style sheets, that's where we're going to put bootstrap.css, and in JavaScript is where we'll put bootstrap.js. Alright, so we can close that. So let's go back to our views folder, and you can see we have layout.jade. If we open that up, basically it just, the generator gave us these templates and just has HTML, head, body tags, things like that. It's including the style CSS sheet that's in the public folder. Now for the layout, in your project files you'll have a file called _layout.jade, and that's going to include just a very basic boilerplate for a Bootstrap page. Alright, so basically just the nav bar in the content area. So I'm going to replace this with that. Alright, and we'll go through it real quick. So we have our doc type, HTML, head area. We're including Bootstrap along with style CSS. In our body we have a nav bar. We have the unordered list right here with the list items. Then we have a container div, and inside that container we have our content. And then at the bottom we're just including jQuery and our Bootstrap.js. So let's save that, and check it out. And actually that doesn't look right. The nav bar should go all the way across. Oh, you know what I think it is the styles CSS file. So let's go open that up. That's in public style sheets. Yeah, see we have a padding 50 pixels for the body. We don't want that. So let's just get rid of all that. And there we go. Okay, so we have our nav bar. Let's go ahead and change the project name to Node-Auth. And let's, for this link right here, we'll say register, and that's going to go to /users/register. This one here will be login, so that one's going to go to users/login. Alright, and let's also add a logout. Actually, the logout I want to put on the right side, so let's go on the same level as this UL. So right here, and we'll say ul dot nav dot navbar dash nav, and we also want navbar right. Okay, just like that. Okay, we'll put a space here and paste that in. Change this to logout. Change this to logout. And there we go. Now the logout isn't going to be showing when we're not logged in. Same thing here. We won't see the register and log in when we are logged in. But we'll have to do that later. Alright, so let's go to some of the other views here. So the index, that's going to be kind of, I guess, the members page or the dashboard, the page that you're going to go to after you log in. Alright, and when we're done, our final product, you won't be able to actually visit the members page unless you're logged in. If you do, and you're not logged in, you'll get redirected to the login page. Alright, but just for now, let's take this index and for this H1, let's say members area, and then our paragraph here will say welcome to the members area. Alright, and we can actually change the home link. I'm going to change that to members. So next thing I want to do is take care of the register route, okay, because if we click it now we get a not found. What we're going to do is go to, where do we want to go? Users.js inside of our routes, and let's copy this. Okay, and this is going to be /register. Now remember, since we're in the users route, this is actually going to be /users/register. Alright, what we want to do here is say res.render, and we want to render, oops, what did I do? Okay, we want to render register. So we're going to save this, and we need to create register. So let's go to views. We'll create a new file. We'll save it as register.jade. So in register.jade, we're going to extends layout, and then we want block content. Alright, and let's put in an H1. Actually, we'll put in H2, give it a class of page header. And we'll say register. Then we'll put a paragraph. Alright, so let's actually just make sure that this will load. If we go to users/register, we're going to have to restart the server. Okay. So we're getting it, but for some reason the CSS isn't showing. If we look at the source code, we have style sheets bootstrap, and that's not found. Okay, I think we just need to add a slash in front of that. So let's go to our layout.jade, and where we have this style sheets, we want to put a slash here and here. There we go. Okay, so there's our register. Now we're going to have to create a form, so let's go back to register.jade, and let's see, we're going to put in a form, give it a method of post. Let's give it an action. Action is going to be /users/register. Alright. Now we're going to have a file upload here, a profile image, and we need to make our form multi-part. We have to give it an enc type. So let's say enc type, and that's going to be multi-part / form data. Alright, and that has nothing to do with Node, that's just HTML. If you want to upload a file, you need to add that attribute. Alright, now we're going to add a class called form group. Okay, and we'll space that, and let's give this a label of name, and then we want an input dot form control. Okay, we'll give it a name of name. Let's give it a type of text. Okay, and then we'll give it a placeholder. Alright, so we're just going to copy this because we're going to need a couple more. Okay, so after name will be email. So this will be name equals email. And the type will also be email. Placeholder. Okay, next thing will be the username. That's good, that's going to be text. Then we need a password. Okay, oh actually I forgot to change the labels. So this will be email, this will be username, this will be password. Type is going to be password. Okay, we're also going to want a confirm password field, so I'm going to copy this. And we'll call this password 2. Alright, and then finally we want our profile image. So for this label we'll say profile image. Alright, and then we'll have our form control. Name is going to be let's say profile image. Alright, type would be file. And we don't want a placeholder. Alright, so those are the fields. Now we're going to also need a button, so let's go right here, and this will be input. Type will say submit. Is that what I want? Yeah, type. We need to put this in parentheses. Alright, and I also want to give it a class, so we're going to say .btn and .btn primary. Okay, that'll make it blue. And then we need the type submit. Let's also give it a name of submit. And we also need a value. Okay, value will say register. Alright, let's take a look at that. Alright, so there's our form. So we're not going to handle the submission yet. What I want to do is get the login view done. So I'm going to copy this because it's going to be very similar to the registration form. Alright, but we're going to create a new view. And let's save this as login.jade. Okay, and we'll paste this in. We'll change a couple things here. This will be login. We'll say please login below. And it's going to go to user/login. And we don't need this enc type attribute here. And all we want is the username and password. So we'll get rid of those and these. And we'll change register to login. Alright, so let's save that, and then we need to go back to our user's route file. Let's copy this, change this to login. Alright, so we'll save that. Let's restart the server. Okay, we'll go to login, and there's our login page. Alright, so we have our views. One last thing I would like to do is have these highlighted with the active class. So what we can do is, let's go to index. You see how we're passing a title here? Let's change this to members. Alright, and then also in the users route, we're going to add a title. So this one will be register, and this one will be login. So now if we go to our layout file where our links are, we can test for those. Alright, so in this li tag right here, let's add parentheses, and we're going to say class equals, and then another set of parentheses. Let's say title is equal to members. Then the class will be active. If not, we can do that with a colon. This is just a shorthand if statement. Alright. If not, then the class will be nothing. Alright, so we want to just grab that and paste that in front of these two as well. This one here will change to register. This one will change to login. And we need to restart the server. Okay, so you can see members is highlighted. If I click register, that gets highlighted. Same thing with login. Alright, so our views and layout is all set up. In the next video, we're going to take a look at registration, and we'll create that functionality. Alright, so we have our views and our layout all set. Now what we want to do is we want to be able to register a user. Alright, so we have our form, and if we open up routes, users, you can see we have a couple of requests, but we have all GET requests. We need a POST request to register. Alright, well, it's actually user/register. So I'm going to copy this, and we're going to change GET to POST. And let's get rid of this. Now, it's really important to understand that when we submit a form and we can grab the data using request.body.whatever, let's say email. Alright, and we usually do that using body parser, which we have installed and set up. But body parser cannot handle file uploads, and we have this profile image upload. That's where Multer comes in. Alright, if we look in our app.js file here, you can see we have this Multer, and we're setting our upload directory. So what we actually need to do is copy this, and we're going to paste that up here in users.js. Alright, and there's a little extra step. We need to add an extra parameter right here. Alright, so what we need to do is say upload.single, okay, because it's a single file. And if we look at the name, actually we want to go to register.jade, and you can see right here we have the name of profile image. Alright, so that's what we want to use. So back to users.js, and we just want to put that in there. Alright, so now we should be able to get the fields, or the values for the fields. So to test things out, let's say console.log, and let's say request.body.name. Alright, so we're going to save that, make sure we restart, reload, and inside the name we'll just say test. Okay, and that stuff doesn't matter yet, so let's submit, and you can see we get test. Now what I want to do when we submit is I want to put all those values into their own variable. Alright, so for instance, let's say var name, we're going to set that to request.body.name. Alright, we're going to do that to all of them, so I'm going to copy this. Okay, so this one here will be email. This one will be username. We get password. And also password 2. Now password 2 isn't being submitted into the database, we're just using it for validation, which we'll get to in a second. So this takes care of the text fields. Now we also have our image, so I just want to do kind of a little test and say console.log, and it should be under request.file. Alright, if it was an array, instead of using single like we are here, we would use request.files. Alright, but let's just try that out. Okay, we need to restart the server. And I got a sample image, just some balloons. So I'm going to try to upload that. Let's reload this and choose file. And I'm going to grab that image and register. Alright, so you can see what rec.file gave us. Gave us a bunch of information. The file name or the field name, the original image name, the encoding, MIME type, destination, file name, path, and size. Alright, so you can do all kinds of validations here if you want a certain size or certain MIME types, things like that. So first thing we want to do is test to see if the file is actually uploaded or not. So let's say if rec.file okay, we're going to do an else. Alright, so let's try this out. Okay, if we go ahead and upload it, we get uploading file. Now if we go back and we don't choose to upload, we get no file uploaded. So, alright, so that's what we want. Now if we go to our folder here, node auth, you can see we have an uploads folder, and if we look in here, we actually have some files here. So these are image files, and they'll display in the browser if we point to them. Alright, but I'm actually going to delete those because they're pretty much all the same thing. Alright, so let's delete those. Alright, so we know that that's working. Now we want to grab that file name. So if there is a file uploaded, we're going to create a variable called, let's call it profile image equals request.file name. Alright, now if there isn't one uploaded, then we want to create the same variable, profile image, and we want to set it to, we'll say no image .jpg. Alright, because if there isn't one, then we'll just have a standard image that we can load to show instead of the image that's not there. Alright, so that should take care of all the file uploading stuff. Now what we want to do is we want to add some form validation. Alright, remember we're using the express validator. So let's just put that stuff here. Alright, so to do this, we're going to say request.checkBody, and then in here we want the field name. In this case, let's say name. Okay, then we need a description. We'll say name field is required. Alright, and then we need a property. Let's say at the end here, .not empty. Okay, and it's actually a function. Now before I go and I add the rest of them, I just want to finish this so we can actually test it first. Alright, so next thing we need to create a variable called errors, and we're going to set it to rec.validation errors. Alright, and then we're going to check for that. So if errors, then let's console log errors, else no errors. Alright, so let's try this out. So we'll go to register and let's just click it. Okay, so you can see it says errors. If I put a name in there and submit, we get no errors. Alright, so we know that that's working. So let's add the rest of our fields here. I'm going to copy this. Alright, so we want the email to also be required. So let's put in email, not empty. Let's just change this. We also want it to be a valid email, so alright, and we have to just change this from not empty to is email. Alright, next one is going to be username. That's going to be required. Okay. Next one is password. It's also going to be required. Alright, and then we want password to match the confirm password. Alright, so this one is going to go on to password 2, and the message passwords do not match. Alright, and instead of this not empty, we're going to change that to equals. And then as a parameter, we have to put in the field that we want it to equal, which will be rec.body.password. Alright. So what do we want to happen when there is or isn't any errors? Well, we're going to want to render. If there are errors, then we're going to want to re-render the page. So we know that. So let's say res.render. Alright, and we're going to render register, and we need to pass along errors. So let's save that. Alright, and now let's restart. Alright, so we're at register. Let's go ahead and try to register. And it should... Oh no, we got rid of the console log, that's right. Alright, so it's just re-rendering this for us. But what we want is we want it to re-render, but we also want to see what's the problem. What do we need to do? Alright, so we need to go to our register.jade. And let's go right under this paragraph and create a UL. We'll say ul.errors, and then we're going to say if, actually we don't need parentheses, so if errors, then we're going to do a loop through the errors. So each error, comma I in errors. Then we want to spit out a list item. It's going to have a class of alert and alert danger. Okay, and then we just want to spit out the error, so we can use this syntax. We can say error.msg. Alright, so we'll save that. And there we go. It's giving us all of our errors. Actually, you know what? Let's not use a list item. Let's get rid of the UL. And then this here will just be a div. Let's try that. Oops, what did I do? Okay, expected indent but got new line. Oh, this needs to be indented. Alright, so register, there we go. So if I put a name in, see this name field is required, it doesn't show up anymore. Alright, so let's just see if we can do a successful submission. Nothing else is going to happen. We're not going to get any, it's not going to get put into the database or anything yet. Alright, so we're not getting any, nothing's going to happen because we're not doing anything right here. Console log, no errors. No errors. Alright, so we know that the validation's working. In the next part, we're going to go ahead and create our models using Mongoose so that we can get ready to actually add a user to our database. Alright, so in the last video we created our register form. We have some form validation. We can upload an image. Now we still can't add a user to the database because we haven't added our schema yet. Alright, so when you're working with Mongoose, which is an ORM module for MongoDB, you need to create what's called a schema and also a model. Okay, so the schema is going to be inside of a model. So what we need to do is let's go to the root of our application, and we're going to create a new folder called models. Alright, and then in that model folder we're going to have a file called user.js. Alright, and we're going to bring in Mongoose. Okay, then we're going to connect. I'm going to say mongoose.connect, and we want to put the URL of our database. So this will be MongoDB localhost, and whatever you called it, I called mine nodeauth. And then we need a variable that's going to hold the connection. So mongoose.connection. Alright, now we're going to define our user schema. So we'll create a variable called user schema, and we're going to set that to mongoose.schema. Alright, and then here we're going to open up some curly braces, and we're going to have a username. Okay, this is going to be a string, so we want to say type string, and we want to index true. Okay, next thing will be a password. Type will be string. Next thing will be email. String. Name. And what else? Profile image. Okay, so they're all strings. Alright, so that's the schema. Now we want to create a variable down here called user, and we're going to set that equal to module.exports. Okay, we want to be able to use this outside of this file. So we're going to export mongoose.model, and then we want to pass in the model name, which is user, and also the user schema variable. Alright, and we're going to create a function in here that will be available from outside called create user. So we're going to say module.exports.create user, set that to a function. Okay, that's going to take in new user as well as a callback, and then we're going to say new user dot save and pass in that callback. Alright, and that's it. So let's go ahead and save that. Let's go to our route users, and we're going to go right here, and we're going to bring in that model. So we're going to say user equals require, and what we want to put here is /models/user. Alright, so we now have access to that user object. So now we can go down here where we have our registration. Alright, and let's get rid of that. And now what we'll do is create a variable called new user, and I'm going to set it to new user, and then we're going to pass in some stuff. Okay, so we want the name, and remember we have all this stuff in variables up here, so we have a name variable. Email, username, password, and profile image. Okay, and then right below here we're going to say user dot create user. Okay, remember we put that in our model right here. So we're going to say user.create user, and then we can pass in our new user that we just created, and then we have our callback. Alright, so this here, new user, and then our callback matches what we have here. Alright, and then down here we're just calling save. Okay, so in here all we want to do is check for an error. Okay, we'll say if error, then let's go ahead and throw the error. Alright, and this takes error parameter and also user. Alright, and then down here let's just console.log the user. Alright, so that'll go ahead and create the new user. Then what we want to do is we want to redirect. So we're going to say res.location, and we'll set that to just the home page, and we also want to say res.redirect to the home page. Let's save it and let's see what happens. Alright, so let's restart the server. And we'll go to register, let's say Mike Smith. Username, we'll say Mike. Password. Password is not going to be encrypted yet. And for the image, we'll grab that balloons image. Alright, so let's see what happens. We got redirected, Alright, now if we want to check this out and actually see if Mike was entered, we have to go to our command line and we have to go to our Mongo shell. So I'm going to open up a new window here. Okay, we're going to go to C, MongoDB, and to the bin folder. Okay, from here we can say Mongo. Oh yeah, for some reason it doesn't work in this command line. So what I'll do is open up just the standard Windows command line. Alright, so let's go to /mongodb/bin mongo. Alright, so now let's say show DBs. We have our node auth, so we'll say use node auth, and then we can say db.users.find.pretty. And there he is, Mike Smith. Alright, so we now know that we can add users, we can register, so that's exactly what we want. Alright, now one thing that I want to mention is that when we registered, we got redirected to the home page, but we didn't have any kind of message, so we want to be able to use messages. Alright, so let's go back down here. We want to go right before we did our redirect, and we're going to say rec.flash. Okay, remember we installed that connect flash module. That's what we're using here. So we want a success message, and then we want the actual message. Okay, we'll say you are now registered and can log in. Okay, now let's save that. It's not going to do it yet. We need to actually add something to our layout. Alright, so in our layout, we're going to go right above our block content right here. And we're just going to put in exclamation equals and then messages. Alright, so let's save that and go ahead and restart. And we'll go to register. We'll say Tom Williams. Oops. Username Tom, password, and register. Alright, and now you can see we have a message. You are now registered and can log in. Now we can change the look of this a little bit if we go to our little element highlighter here and see that we have a UL of success with a class of success and then an LI. Alright, so what we can do is go into our CSS. Let's go to public style sheets, style CSS, and we'll say ul.success li. And I'm just going to paste some stuff in here, some padding and margin, border, and then also some color. Okay. Now for the error, we'll say ul.error, and we're just going to change the color. We'll leave that stuff, so this will make it red. Let's save that. Alright, so now if we go and we try again, and there we go. So now we get a nice looking alert. And I'm just going to throw in list style none. Alright, so we now can interact with our database. We can add data. In the next video, we're going to get into logging in and authentication and also password encryption. Hey guys, in this video we're going to make it so that we can encrypt passwords, okay? Because right now we're storing passwords as plain text, and that is a horrible idea. Alright, so there's a few different things that we can use to do it. We're going to be using BCrypt. More specifically, we're going to be using BCrypt.js. Alright, you could use BCrypt, but there's a ton of dependencies. You need to have, for instance, Visual Studio. You need to have OpenSSL and a bunch of other stuff. So this, you can see, is BCrypt in plain JavaScript with 0 dependencies. Alright, so gives you some of the code examples down here. We're just going to go ahead and install it. So I'm going to stop the app from running, and we're going to say npm install BCrypt.js, and we want to save that in our package.json file. Alright, so just to check, if we go to node modules, and you can see we have BCrypt.js right here. Alright, so let's open up app.js, and we're going to go ahead and include it here. Okay, so this will be BCrypt, and we're going to require BCrypt.js, just like that. Make sure that's saved, and then we're going to go to our users route, and actually I'm going to copy what we just did and put that in the users as well. Actually, no, I don't want it here. I want it in the model. So models user.js. Okay, and we'll put this right here. Now down here in create user, this is where we're going to implement this. Alright, and if we look at the documentation, as far as usage, you can do this synchronously or asynchronously. Synchronously, it's going to do line by line, one at a time, which is going to be a little slower than asynchronous. So we're going to use asynchronous, which means we have to use it through callbacks. Alright, so this is what we want. Okay, we already did this, we already required it. Now let's copy this, and we're going to go right into our create user function right here and paste that in. Alright, now instead of this right here in this hash function, we're going to take this out, and we're going to replace it with new user dot password, okay, because that's what we want to hash, and new user is coming from here. Alright, and then what we're going to do is take this, cut it, and put that right in here, and the hash is actually going to be passed in right here. So what we want to do is say new user dot password is going to equal hash. Okay, and then it will get saved. So it's just hashing the password before it gets saved. So let's go ahead and see if this works. Make sure you save it, and let's go to our git bash console here, and we'll say npm start. Okay, we'll open our application, and let's go to register. Okay, this will say Paul Smith email, username will say Paul, password I'm going to do 1234, actually we'll do 6. Alright, choose file, actually he doesn't need a profile image, so let's register. Alright, so that went good. You can see in here password is this. Alright, so we now have a safe, secure, hashed password. So I think that's going to do it for this video. In the next video we're going to implement passport and our login feature. Hey guys, in the last video we went ahead and hashed our passwords using BCrypt. Now we're going to get into our login functionality. Okay, we're going to be using Passport with it, which is an authentication module for Node.js. And what's great about Passport is it's highly customizable. It just gives you kind of a simple layer that sits on top of your application, and you can kind of do what you want with it. You can use a local strategy, which is what we'll be doing, and that means we're going to have a username and password and a local database. All right, but you can also use things like Facebook login, Twitter login, and a bunch of other types of logins. So let's go to our documentation here and go to Authenticate, and this is going to show us that we need a post route to our login, and we also need to include this passport.authenticate. Alright, so what I'm going to do is copy this, and we're going to go into, this is my user model, we want to go into routes and then users.js. Alright, and let's see, we'll go down here. Okay, so under, oh, we already have login right here. I'm just going to paste this in. Oh no, that's the GET request. Sorry about that. Let's do the post. So we'll paste that in right below it. Instead of app, we're using our router. Okay, so router post login, authenticate, we're using a local strategy. Then we have our function. I do just want to add an extra parameter in this authenticate function here. This is going to be an object, and we're going to add in failure redirect. Okay, so we just need to specify where we want the app to go if it's a failure, and we're going to want it to go just to our login. Alright, so we're going to say /users/login. Alright, we also want a message if it's a failed login. So let's say failure flash. Alright, and that'll just say invalid username or password. Okay, now inside here, I'm going to get rid of this. And what we're going to want to do is a flash message, so we'll say rec.flash, and this is going to be a success message. Alright, and let's say you are now logged in. Then we want to redirect to the home page. Alright, so that's our route. Now what we need to do is, since we're using local here, we need to create a local strategy. So I'm going to put that right below it. Okay, so right here we're going to say, actually, no, what we need to do is include passport first. And I can grab that from app.js. Okay, we're going to want passport, but we're also going to want this local strategy. Actually, you know what, let me move that down. And then I'm going to copy these two lines. Okay, I'm going to put those right there. Alright, so now down here, let's see, I'm going to say passport.use, and then inside here we're going to open a new local strategy. Actually, in here we're going to have a function. Okay, this function is going to have a username, password, and done, which is a callback. Alright, and then inside here, we're going to call a model method that we haven't created yet, but we will. It's going to be called getUserByUsername. Alright, and then in here, we're going to pass in username, and then a callback function. Okay, this is going to take in an error and user, and we're going to check to see if there's an error. If there is, we're going to throw the error, and then we're going to check to see if there's a user or if there's not a user. Okay, if there's not a user, then we're going to return done, and we want to pass in a couple parameters, null, false, and then we need an object with a message. So for the message, we're going to say unknown user. Alright, so that'll check for the username. After that, we're going to call another function that we're going to create called compare password. Alright, so in here we're going to pass in password, and then the actual password, which will be user.password, and then our callback. Okay, this is going to take in error and also is match, okay, to see if the password matched any. So in here we're going to check for the error. If there is an error, then let's return done and pass in the error. Alright, and then we get a check for is match. So if is match, we're going to return done, null, and false. I'm sorry, not false, user. Okay, this is also going to have an else. Okay, if there isn't a match, then we're also returning done, but we're going to pass in null, false, and then a message. Alright, and that's it. So this is very simple. We're just getting a user by the username that's passed in. If there's no user found, then we're going to return done along with false. Down here we're comparing the user's password. If it does match, then we're going to return done and we're going to pass along the user. If it's not a match, we're going to return done and we're going to pass along false. Alright, so let's save that. Now there's also two other methods or functions we need to include, which is serialize user and deserialize user. And I think we should have an example here. Let's see, where is it? The one complaint that I have about this documentation is that everything is very spread out. Okay, they don't really have any full examples with all the code together. It's very spread out through the documentation. But what we want is right here. So we want to copy that, and then I'm going to put it right above the strategy. Alright, and they have this find by ID. We're actually going to use our get user by ID, which we'll create. That's what I mean by this is very flexible. We can just use whatever ORM we want and our own functions. Alright, so that looks good. Let's save that. So now what I want to do is let's take a look at the login view. So login Jade, and you can see that this is going to users/login. Okay, we already handled the post. So what's next? We now need to create these functions here. Okay, that we need get user by ID and compare password. So we're going to put that inside the model. So let's go down to the bottom here, and let's do get user by ID. Since we're using these outside of the file, we're going to use module exports, and this will be get user by ID. Alright, and this is going to take in an ID and callback, and then we're going to say user dot find by ID, and then we'll pass in ID and callback, and that's it. So notice that in here they used find by ID right from the route, but we want to have all of our user functions inside of our model, so we're doing it all through here. Okay, next one will be get user by username. Okay, that's going to take in obviously a username, callback. Okay, and we're going to set a variable called query, and let's set that to an object, username. Alright, and then we just want to call user.find1, which is just going to get one record, and we want to pass in our query and callback. Okay, and then we need to create our compare password, and that should be the last one. Whoops. Alright, so this is going to take in a candidate password. Okay, it's also going to take in hash and callback. Okay, now inside here, this is where we need to use our BCrypt method. So let's open up the documentation for BCrypt.js, and we need to use compare. Okay, so we want to go down to this. Let's grab that. Okay, we're going to paste that in here. Now right here we want to include candidate password. So we're going to replace that. Okay, and then we have hash. And for this, let's say is match, and then we want our callback, and that's going to take in null and is match. Alright, so make sure we save that, and our users route, make sure that's saved. And let's restart the server. Okay. Alright, so we know that Paul has an encrypted password, so let's use him. Actually, let's do a test with something that's not a username. Okay, so invalid username or password. So if we say Paul with the wrong password, same thing. If we say Paul with the correct password, we're now logged in. Awesome. So it's now working. We're logged in. Now we need a way to actually tell if we're logged in. We also need a way to log out, and we need to implement some kind of access control for the members area. And we will do that next. Hey guys, in the last video we implemented Passport and we can now log in. I should be currently logged in, so what we're going to do is create a route for our logout. So let's go to routes and then users.js, and we're going to go down to the bottom here, and let's say router.get, and the route is going to be /logout, which will be users/logout. Okay, so function, this is going to be very simple. We're going to pass in request and res, and then all we need to do to log out is say rec.logout. Alright, and then we're going to just create a message, so say rec.message. rec.flash. And that's going to be a success message, and the text for that will just say you are now logged out. Okay, then we'll simply redirect. Oops, we need res redirect, Now we're going to redirect back to the login page because the index page or the members page, we're not going to be able to access that. Okay, we're going to put some restrictions on that. So this will go to /users/login. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that and let's restart this. Now this link you can see down here, it goes to users logout. So if I click that, it brings us to the login page and tells us we're logged out. Now if I click on members, we're still able to see it, and we don't want that. So let's go to our index routes, which we haven't even, I don't think we've touched this file at all, really. It's just a route to the index. So what we want to do here is we want to go in between the route here and the function. Okay, we're going to have another parameter, and this is going to be ensure authenticated. Okay, I'm going to go like that. Alright, and we have to create this function. So let's go down here and say function ensure authenticated, and we're going to pass into that rec res next. Alright, we're going to say if rec dot is authenticated, actually that needs parentheses. So if is authenticated, then we're going to return next. Okay, if not, down here we're going to say res dot redirect, and we're going to get redirected back, back to the login. So /users/login. Alright, let's save that. Actually, next has to be a function, so we want to make sure that we have parentheses there. So we'll save it, and let's go and restart. Okay, so if we go back, now we can't get to the members page, so let's log in. And now we can. Alright, cool. So the next thing I want to do is, I don't want these, if we're logged in, I don't want to show the register and login. Same thing if we're logged out, I don't want to see log out. That doesn't make any sense. Alright, so let's go to our layout.jade. We need a global variable that is going to let us know if we're logged in or not. So we're going to put it in here, but first we're going to create it in app.js. Alright, so what we're going to do is go right below this. Okay, so this is how you can create a global variable, res.locals.whatever. In this case, it's messages. So let's say app.get. So this is, we're gonna make a GET request to any page. Okay, you can do that with an asterisk. All right, so any page, this is gonna run. Okay, and that's gonna take in rec res next. All right, and what we want to do is say res.locals.user, and that's going to equal rec.user or null. And then we just want to say next. Okay, so let's save that, and then we'll go into our layout Jade again, and go where we have our links here, and we want to go right here, and let's say if not user. Okay, if not user, and then we just want to space these out like that. Okay, if not user, then it's going to show register and login. Alright, down at the logout, for this one, we want to say if user. Okay, and we'll just space that. So let's save that, and let's restart. Okay, there we go. So we have register and login. Actually, members we could leave, or you could get rid of it. Actually, we'll just get rid of it. So up at members, we're going to say if user. There we go. Alright, so now if we log in, alright, now you can see that the register and login, it's not there, which is what we want. Alright, so we now have a full user login system, login and registration. Log out, and there we go. Alright, so I know that this project had a lot of videos to it. I didn't mean for it to be that long, but it's good stuff. It's stuff that you can keep reusing, and we will reuse certain parts of this system in future projects. Alright, so I'll see you in the next project.